Yo, so I keep hearing about Zach LaVine and the Detroit Pistons. I don't know why. I don't know why. And it frustrates me to no end to continue to hear it. But I want to give you all three reasons why the Detroit Pistons need to stay the hell away from Zach LaVine. The first one is that I think most of the league is aware that his knees are shot. That his knees, his lower body injuries that he's had over the years, that he's had multiple major surgeries on, are not going to get better. And what you're essentially doing is hamstringing your salary cap to a guy who's going to be making 46, 47, $48 million a year over the next 3 seasons because he's going to pick up his player option in that last season. And I know some of y'all might say to yourself, well, hey, he could be an expiring deal in that last season. We could bring somebody else in. That's if you can flip him. But until then, he's going to hamstring your salary cap as a player who is potentially unplayable, who is not going to be able to show up and be consistent. He's definitely not going to be able to give you defensive effort because that's all about injuries and being willing to put your body on the line, which if you've had lower body injuries, you are not trying to do, especially if you're not even in the playoffs. So the first reason, the injuries. Everybody sees what's happening with Kawhi Leonard in the Los Angeles Clippers and how terrible it looks not being able to rely on somebody when you need them the most. What do you think is going to happen with a Zach LaVine, who's not playing for anything? He's not going to get an all-star berth, right? He's not going to be getting looked at. They aren't going to have a bunch of nationally televised games, right? He's not going to be in the media cycle. He's not going to be somebody who is going to be commanding all this fanfare. Do you really think that he's going to put his body on the line and continue to show up and try to push through a little bit of pain, maybe even a lot of pain, maybe the discomfort? Do you think he's going to give you everything he's got so that he can play the maximum amount of games? I doubt it. The injuries is numero uno why they should stay away from him. Number two, to bring him in, you are essentially kicking the can on Jaden Ivey. 2 years into his young career, the 6'5", 6'9" wingspan, number 4 pick in his draft, who's shown a lot of promise, has had a lot of issues in terms of his actual play style, and I'll give you that. But he is extremely talented. His athleticism, his bounce, his first step, his ability to get to the rim and finish, he's almost like a less polished Zach LaVine. He is an athlete of athletes. The only difference is he's only 2 years into his career. He's only 2 years in. And so when you think about to bring in Zach LaVine, who's a two-time All-Star, who's a max salary player, who's used to being the man on the Chicago Bulls within the same division, kicking the Detroit Pistons behind, up and down the court throughout his career, do you really think that he's going to come in and be willing to play second fiddle to Jaden Ivey? And to even that respect, to Cade Cunningham, but I'm going to get into that in number 3. But it's to say that your number 4 pick, you're essentially telling him that you've moved on from him. And I think that would be a huge mistake, simply because of Jaden Ivey's roots, his talent, his commitment, his desire to get better. And he has the type of upside that I think could be Zach LaVine healthy. He can be everything that Zach LaVine is today, except in year 4 or 5, but healthy and costing a fraction of what Zach LaVine is going to cost you. So the second reason is he's going to completely nullify any investment in Jaden Ivey. The third reason, and this is definitely a major reason that I think gets overlooked, is that there's no way Zach LaVine is coming to the Detroit Pistons and going to play second fiddle to Cade Cunningham, to Jaden Ivey, to Jalen Duren. When he steps on the court, he's going to demand to start. He's going to demand his touches. He's going to demand to be the focal point. He's going to be a black hole, as he's always been, even in Chicago. And he's not going to win. If you looked at his time in Chicago before DeMar DeRozan got there, he was not winning. He was not taking his team to the playoffs, which is a major reason why, despite his stats, he wasn't making all-star games. But then when you saw DeMar DeRozan arrive, all of a sudden you saw somebody who understood what leadership looked like, who understood what it took to make it to the playoffs, who had been there before multiple times with the Toronto Raptors, was used to a winning culture and a winning franchise, and was able to lead them. Now, I know we can hope that Zach LaVine has learned some things from DeMar DeRozan, but do you really expect him to play mentor role at the age of 29, in the prime of his career, who's looking to revitalize his career. Because remember, he asked for a trade last season, and nobody would trade for him. Nobody was willing to put a deal on the table for him. And I think that that has to be a major blow to his ego. And when you are an NBA player, you are somebody who has a huge, huge ego and irrational confidence that we always talk about. So when you see yourself as a max salary player, the number one option, two-time All-Star, who demands a trade, and nobody is willing to trade for you, that has to be such a huge blow. But if you find yourself dealt to the team with the worst record in the NBA, and they ask you to either come off the bench behind some unproven young guys or to play second fiddle to guys who are unproven, I think what you're going to see is it could become a very toxic situation fast. And it could be the type of thing that you don't want your incoming brand new coach to have to deal with the ego of a player who's saying, look, you have nobody on this team who has the right or the validity or the proof to say I should be back up to them. And I know that we might say, hey, the organization can still talk to him and get through to him. Yeah, but when it comes down to it on the court, what's going to happen? And if this is supposed to be Cade Cunningham's team, if this is the guy that you're committing yourself to, you want to make sure that you continue to reinforce that this is his team, not bringing in a guy who's going to immediately see it as his team and probably have a right to think so. Now, some of the other options that I think would be great for the Detroit Pistons to explore to absorb salary cap. One was mentioned today on Woodward Pistons. I like Lonzo Ball. Forget trying to get a draft pick out of it. Who cares about the picks? People who are talking about assets and picks for the future, why? You have so many young guys on this team who have been at the top of their draft, right? I keep telling people the starting five almost entirely. Cade Cunningham, Jaden Ivey, Asar Thompson, Jalen Duren would have all been number one picks in this past draft. All of them. All of them. And Isaiah Stewart would have probably been a top five pick, if not higher. That's how talented this squad is. And so when we think about bringing in more talent that you're going to have to develop, I think it's something that I don't think this organization is trying to do at all, especially when you see them trying to move on from guys that they know that they're going to have to develop. So I wouldn't mind seeing Alonzo Ball. I wouldn't mind seeing them go after, and this would be a more shrewd pickup. But I like Dorian Finney-Smith. Look, I like Ron Holland. I like him a lot. But I think that he's going to need a little bit of time to refine that jump shot, maybe some time in the G League, maybe just some time on the bench and learning the game, adjusting. And I think somebody like Dorian Finney-Smith can show him the ropes. He could be an excellent addition off the bench on the wing to be able to provide some versatility. I think somebody who's worth pursuing, potentially even including a second round pick or something like that. Maybe send Brooklyn those second round picks that you got from Dallas and go get you a guy who can be a core veteran presence guy to balance this team for the future at a position of need. So I think that those are some great pickups. Now I know that they still got to fill out the roster, probably with some more depth at point guard, and some more depth at center. I think they can do that, fill things out, and be just fine. But as always, I want to know what you all think. What do you think about Zach LaVine? Do Detroit Pistons need to stay away from him, like I believe that they should? He should be kryptonite. But if not, let me know what you think. Like, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications. Share the video in your group chats and get at me in the comment section. I'm going to holler at y'all later. Peace.